Hi everybody. I wanted to put a question to you that I recently asked a group of people while I was away on leave. So recently I was lucky to be able to take a week off work. It was the first time in a long time. And during one of the evening meals while I was on leave, the conversation around the table turned to estate planning and wills and succession and advanced care planning. Being the only lawyer in the room, all eyes turned to me to see what I might have to say and what information, I might share. But what I also really gathered from this conversation, in which I really enjoyed the opportunity to get these insights of, was what holds people back from attending to their estate planning or their advanced care planning or thinking about their succession earlier in life. Why do people leave it to the end of life or when there's a crisis, and then when they're already under a great deal of stress and they haven't really got time to properly think about and consider things, or to get the advice and then to think about that advice and work out how they might want to apply it? Why is it left? What's the concern? What are the worries? What are the fears about talking about your will or your advanced care planning or your succession? So I put that question back to the group, and I was really thankful for their generosity and their openness, because they shared a lot of different reasons, maybe not necessarily some of their own. It was usually, oh, well, my father says this, my mother says that, my auntie says this, and it's quite personal. So people were maybe deflecting a little bit, or maybe they didn't feel they had the answer, so they were drawing on other people's answers. Either way, there was only one or two around the table of 12 who had thought about their advanced care planning or their estate planning and who had done anything about it. One was a nurse and one was a former police woman. So you could understand why both of those would be confronted with life and death situations, and that would be a pretty strong prompt and catalyst for them to go and get some advice and to put a few things in place. For everybody else, there was a range of answers. Some were, it's just too complicated. Every time I start, I get interrupted or I don't get it finished. One answer was, my father's worried if he thinks about his will, it'll bring on his imminent death, which I can say is not usually the case. So I think these things are really important, and I think they're worth setting time aside to talk about. It's a process to do it well. It's not something that you want to leave until you're in a very stressful situation or there is a crisis, because none of us ever make great decisions when we're in crises. We make the decisions we need to make to get through, and they do the job. But perhaps if we had the benefit of time and information and advice, we may make different decisions. So I want to find out from you, what is preventing you from engaging in the process of estate planning or succession planning or advanced care planning? I'd like to hear about it. You can leave me a message, you can email me, you can find links to contact us on our website at baysidelegalservices.com.au. But I'd like to know for a few reasons. One is, if there's anything we're doing as estate planning succession lawyers that is making it a little bit too tricky for people to engage with readily, I'd like to know about it. I would like to be able to educate people more on the benefits, and so I'm going to start with this. From an estate planning and succession lawyer's point of view, I see enormous benefits in taking the time to make it a priority to start thinking about your estate planning and advanced care planning, to start gathering some information, to start writing down some of your thoughts, things that you know you want to do, things that feel difficult or hard. And they're the questions you bring to us as lawyers. We have access to a lot of information, a lot of experience, a lot of cases. We are trained to deal with this. We are essentially problem solvers. So when you find you've reached the end of something and it's too difficult and you just don't know what the right step is to take next, come and speak to someone like me and others who are trained and experienced in this area. We love to sit down with people and make the time and hold space to listen. And I can say that a lot of my clients come to me, they usually say, we just want a simple will. And I'm like, great, if we can do a simple will for you, we'd love to. But when we start to step through things and consider what needs to be looked at and what might need to be included or excluded, it usually is a really eye-opening experience. And people often come to me with a lot of tension and heaviness and worry about things, complicated family circumstances, not wanting to hurt people's feelings. Maybe there's been some wrong done in the family and they will need to address this as they go through their advanced care planning, preparation and estate planning, and that feels really difficult and it's uncomfortable and they would really rather not deal with it because it's upsetting. So we sometimes have tears, we always have tissues available, but usually at the end of a session, which can run anywhere from half an hour to a couple of hours, people will walk away with a lot more information, a lot more clarity about where things sit for them, a lot more clarity about what steps can be taken next, and they usually feel lighter and more grounded. It's a bit cathartic. I had some lovely clients recently that said this felt more like a counselling session than a legal advice session. Now, I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but they definitely did walk away with some legal advice and recommendations and taking their time to consider what's right for them and come back to me with instructions to start drafting. And that's where estate planning and succession planning is a process. This is not something that can generally be done in a week, and it certainly can't be done well in a week. If you just want to write a will and you think your circumstances really are that simple, then that is good. That can probably be done in a week. And look, wills can be done in emergency circumstances very quickly. But again, much better to get the advice, give yourself the opportunity to think about it, talk to anyone that you want to talk to about it. You might have lots of other things to consider that other families don't. You might have had a first family and then a second family. You may have a blended family. You may have property or assets overseas that we need to think about and consider in your estate planning. Superannuation is another really important one to consider and draft properly into your will. You want to think about your property. How is your property owned? Is your property likely to go to the people that you would want it to go to? Is it the kind of property that the ownership structure enables the right of survivorship to be applied? There's many things to think about and to get good advice on. So when people say, I'm really afraid and I'm worried, that it's going to be too hard, it's going to be complicated, it's not necessarily. When you start a process, there's probably more questions than answers, but by the end of it, you should walk away having a lot more answers in your back pocket, a lot more information to draw on and base your decisions on. And ultimately, I find that it's grounding, it's an empowering exercise. You get to choose who you want your executors to be. You get to choose who you want your enduring power of attorney to be, or your enduring power of guardianship, and what that will look like. You get to have a lot of say in the types of things you may and may not want to have happen. So it's very empowering in that situation to be able to have the opportunity to do that. So when so many things in life are uncertain, there is some space for certainty. There is some things that we can nail down. There are decisions that you can make. It's not all hopeless and, well, I'll just leave it and see what happens, because when we do that, things may not work out the way you would have liked. We don't want things to end up in a position of intestacy or a contested estate as much as we can possibly prevent that. we don't want things to end up in the State Administrative Tribunal for you because decisions that could have been made earlier weren't made, and things are now unclear, and we need the involvement of the tribunals or the court to help bring some clarity. So by thinking and planning ahead when we've got the opportunity, by getting the advice, by taking the time to process that information and make informed decisions, it will bring about some clarity. It'll help to bring some certainty about your life and what's going to happen. And when we do that, we often feel a lot more grounded and reassured. So there's so much more I could say, and I've spoken for long enough, but I would really like to hear what gets in the way of preventing people from coming and doing these things and getting themselves organised, so that we as estate planning and succession lawyers can do our best to serve our clients and to make it a process that's easier to engage with, and to give you outcomes that are going to serve you better. Thanks.